How the hell are you? Looks like I'm live. And oh man, Susan's going to hate that because you can see the ceiling. But how the hell are you? It's Ivan, and I haven't done a live stream in a little while, and I felt like doing one because why the hell not? And it's funny, like I've done this pivot on the channel lately, and it's been an interesting pivot. And why the hell did I pivot? And what the hell? Susan asked me the other day, what made you start to think about all the things you're thinking about right now? And what made you start going down the rabbit hole of like looking at the system and looking at the way things are in the United States and, financial crap or job stuff or whatever. And I thought that was an interesting question, but I have to think of it in terms of the channel as well. I started this channel and started making videos about role-playing games because I just had a rebuttal video to somebody, and I didn't know if I could make a YouTube video or not, but I figured, why? I have to be able to. I just turn the camera on and talk, right? And talk about something I cared about. And I made this cogent argument as best I could about it. And it actually wasn't bad, even though it was ridiculously long and long-winded. But I found very quickly that I enjoyed making YouTube videos, and I enjoyed talking about the things that were on my mind. And I enjoyed doing a deep dive into a subject. And making that video at that time really prompted me to take a deep dive into role-playing games at that moment. Not just role-playing games, but talking about them or thinking about them. Not just playing them, but actually actively like looking at stuff and researching and whatnot. And I found this was a really healthy thing for me to do. It was really advantageous for me and really fulfilling for me to take a real deep dive on a topic, and something about talking about it while I was learning stuff or while I was examining things was better than just examining them, better than just thinking about them or, learning about, it doesn't matter what it is, but the point is, I've always had this love of learning, and this, once I get interested in a subject, I tend to do this really deep dive on it. And actually talking about it on YouTube made it much more, I'm trying to think of the right word, but it was this living, breathing thing. And then when people made comments back, it challenged my thinking this way or the other way. And so it was really cool. It was different than being on a forum. And, over time, like I'd made videos and didn't make videos about various aspects of role-playing games. And I made a whole bunch over the past bunch of years where I was really interested in a different take on role-playing games. And once again, I did this deep dive. And so I enjoyed doing the thinking and the research and learning new things and talking about what I was learning, talking about, what was on my mind. And then, it became not less interesting to me, but I found I'd said most of what I wanted to say at that time. If I decide I want to say something else, I'll say it. I'll make videos about that. But I missed doing stuff with the channel. And, so let's get back to Sue's question. And, it was a little while ago, maybe the end of last year, when I got more and more interested in just what was going on in the country and what was going on, not so much. I mean, there's various things I don't want to get into, but it was more about what the hell is going on with finances, what is going on with economics, what's going on with this huge income disparity. And for whatever reason, I became more and more interested in that. And I'm politically all over the place. I'm, a midline or independent, or whatever you want to call it. I'm an independent. And it's really an issue by issue thing. But there was a lot of stuff from the 80s and trickle down economics that I bought into to a certain extent and believed that they were true. And looking at the data, looking at, the big picture and seeing what had happened, I started to realize, well, you know what? This didn't work out the way that we thought it was working out. And, that, which does not say that I'm throwing capitalism out with the bathwater or, embracing a different, because there's one of the things you learn in political science is there's no easy answer. There really isn't. And it's about like, well, who, what should the rules be? Says who gets to make the rules, says who, all this kind of stuff. But I realized that the system we were living in, the results that we were getting, especially as middle class or Gen Xers and the people after us, were not that good. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And I also just hated the hell out of my job. I wanted out of that. And I'm thinking to myself, well, geez, I'm older now. What kind of marketable skills can I transfer? And it's a typical thing that people start thinking when they get older. because the evidence is out there. Well, the companies don't want to hire you because they're going to get rid of you soon. They can hire a younger person for less money, or they're going to have them for longer. And so I became more and more interested in just looking into all that. And I went through the sort of outrage phase where I was learning more things and just getting pissed off and not really knowing what the hell to do about it. And as I was doing that, I started to, think about, well, what do I want to do? And my initial idea was I want to have a different job, a job that I like better. But what the hell would that be? And maybe a lot of you are in that same boat. I know there's a lot of people in that boat, and they start thinking, well, what could I possibly do that I really like? Because forever I've been told, and you've probably been told that, people that do what they like for a living, you can make a living out of it, they're really, really lucky, and that's not the norm. So don't expect that. And at some kind of time, I decided to call bullshit on that and say, you know what, why shouldn't I or you be the people that do the thing that we actually like and make a living at it? But looking at the job market, which was my first thought, because I was still so programmed, and I'll get to that programming part. It was so programmed into that, and it was very discouraging because anything that interested me, I just didn't have the background for, or the prerequisite skills or prerequisite education for. And a lot of negative self-talk. I was like, I'm not sure if I could do that. And it was funny because as I started to talk a little bit more on YouTube and make some other videos about bass guitar stuff and things that were interesting to me, and saying, you know what, I like talking on YouTube, I'm going to start doing that again. Because I realized, well, I didn't want to just have to do it when I talked about role-playing games. I was going to talk about, I like talking about crap on YouTube, and because it helps me think about it. It makes it more real and more alive. And as I'm doing that, as I'm watching other channels, I'm like realizing, oh my God, people are making a buttload of money on YouTube. And I always used to joke that, gosh, if I just had, 100 times or 1,000 times as many subscribers as I had, well, then I'd be wealthy, because I think, with the amount of subscribers I had and the amount of videos I was making, even when I wasn't making videos, I was making about like a couple $100 a year in AdSense revenue. And so I used to joke with Susan, my God, well, if I just had 1,000 times as many subscribers, well, geez, then I wouldn't have to work and could live a pretty good life. But I said that sort of tongue in cheek, but then I saw, my God, these people are making some money. And I'm not talking about the millions and zillions, although people do that. But, that you can actually make a living doing this. And that was intriguing to me, because it was, the idea that, I've had friends tell me, you ought to get paid to think. I was like, well, that'd be kind of cool. Paid to think and paid to talk about shit. Deal. But I also started to realize, my initial seemed like a pretty good idea was, that naively want to listen to me pontificate about God knows what. Well, then against that, that's certainly not a thing. If enough of you people find me, and idea was that, man, anything else, okay. And what, quite frankly, distasteful, because some of the things that were really important to me, like one of the things that sorry, I'm all over the place, but I realized that my core values are super important to me, and I couldn't do anything that would be just another cage or another thing that felt disingenuous, because my job, part of the deal with my job is not really aligned with who I am and not really aligned with my values and all that kind of stuff. It's not just that what I'm doing I don't give a rat's ass about. It's that very often in line with my values in any way. So I have to play this stupid corporate game, which I absolutely hate, which is complete BS as well. I said, well, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be fake and pretend to really care and pretend to kiss people's asses and all this other kind of nonsense. So I realized that, like, whatever I do has to be something that I can feel really authentic about. And so there are various things where I'm not going to call them unethical. I couldn't, be somebody fake here, and I wouldn't suggest it. Anybody that wants to break out of the 9 to 5, do something that feels inauthentic or feels fake. Can't sleep. I don't know if I just, and so there's other, like, what, dude, this is crap. This is icky. It was so driven on and lived and ate and slept success and all this kind of stuff, because why would I want to have any income at all? well, like I like sleeping indoors. Okay, that's cool, and I like eating food. But more to the point, the idea is like in any job or any business is a means to an end. Getting money, money isn't any cool, isn't awesome for money's sake. I mean, and a lot of people think it is, but it's more like, well, what can I do with it? And beyond just buying bass guitars. But I talked about it this morning in like a shorter video or something. Got up. I had a little bit of time before I had to go into work, and we're sitting outside on our deck, drinking coffee, watching the wind in the trees and the dogs, and talking about stuff. And that's what I have a life like that. I want to have a life where I get to spend time with. I enjoy doing it, even like the simple things, that sort of. The point is, I don't want to, chase success for success's sake. And I don't think you ought to do it either because, once again, it just doesn't feel all that good. So, I realize that there are things that I can offer here that are more genuine, and they have to do with things that I have experience with. And I didn't set out to be somebody that wanted to help people wake up. It was just something that I was interested in. I'd started waking up and seeing the system and the life that we were living for what it was. And it's funny because, as I talk about stuff, Susan laughed at me this morning and says, well, it sounds like conspiracy theory. I'm like, yeah, I know it sounds like it's not really conspiracy theory. It's actually quite fascinating. And I found this YouTuber whose name I cannot remember, who has a great channel. And it's interesting. It's thought-provoking. I don't agree with everything she says. She's from Georgia, and not Georgia, but, not Georgia on my mind, but I'm trying to look it up and see if I can find it as well. But she has some really interesting takes on things. And she really challenged my thinking with this idea of conceptualizing about the system as such, as more like a meme, more like, I mean, I already knew there's no real head. I mean, let's be honest. People get together socially, and certain patterns and behaviors start to emerge because, we are still primates. We still have all these biological holdouts from evolution. These behaviors, some behaviors and some mindsets, which we could say are good. We can put a value judgment and say these are good and these are altruistic, and other ones that are selfish and nasty and all that kind of stuff. And we can, I'm just trying to look up this woman's name while I'm doing this, and I'm not really succeeding so far. But, we've other, here she is. Marina Karlova. Marina Karlova. So go look her up. But these various holdovers from evolution, these behaviors, these things that made it much more likely for our ancestors to survive, some of them are good and some of them are bad. These are the things that when we put them together, we put a bunch of people together with various types of organizations and systems start to emerge. And, the powerful some people tend to rise to the top. And over time, based on the history of life on this planet and the, history of the Industrial Revolution and feudalism and all this other kind of BS, we started to have this system or idea of how things are and how things ought to be based upon like what the people before us told us and the people before them told them. And yes, there were some people that were pulling strings to a certain extent that had an effect on what happened. So the idea that we, during the Industrial Revolution, the people they didn't want a nation of thinkers, they wanted a nation of workers, and getting a school system that kind of produced obedient workers, that kind of stuff. But the people after that, they're not necessarily thinking that. And there's only a few people that decided that was a cool idea. And our parents, when they're telling us, go to school, get a good job, this is, and our teachers and all that stuff, they're not saying this because they're willful puppets of a system and somebody's pulling the strings, making people do all that. It's just simply this repeated meme at this point, and it gets in our head and we start thinking the same way and we never question it. And when we start to deviate from that a little bit, if you're a bit of a maverick and a rebel like me, because I always was, well, people push you back. And people push you back because it's kind of uncomfortable when somebody starts acting weird and starts acting outside of the normal paradigm. All of a sudden you have this thing that we can call the system, but unlike conspiracy theorists or certain rock bands, I'm not going to tell you that there are various people at the head, in some back room that are pulling all the strings and making all this happen. Are there some people that absolutely are taking advantage of it? Yes. And they're doing that all over the world. But sometimes I don't think they even realize what they're doing. They're just taking advantage of the system, or that's already in place. You know what I mean? So that makes it even harder to break free of or conceptualize of breaking free of it, because if there was just somebody we could point at, we could say, well, if we get these bastards out of power, then we'll be free to do whatever. And then we can't think of what to do because we know to go to school and get a good job and work for somebody else and all that kind of stuff. So I always been scared to death of a brick and mortar business for a variety of reasons. And I knew it wasn't necessarily something I wanted to do, but talking to other people and thinking and helping other people with their issues, that started to appeal to me more and more. And at this point, what am I talking about on the channel? Mostly just about waking the F up. That's the biggest thing I talk about lately, because it's something that I think more and more people need to do. I don't believe this channel is for dumb people. I believe it's for people that are of above average intelligence, for people that are willing, in terms of what I'm talking about now, they're people that are willing to think about where they are, people that have gotten a little bit jaded and start to see, something's not right, man. Something is not okay. It's not okay with not just the country or the world situation, but it's not okay with my life. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, and this isn't working. What the hell gives? What do I do now? Because, and so it's for people like that. It's for people that, probably feel like it might be too late. Because it's funny. I'm talking to this guy outside of this context, and he's like 30 years old. Right? No, not even. He's 28 years old, and he's talking to me the other day. Great guy. He's talking to me like, you know what? I'm 10 years out of high school, and all these people out of high school have done all these things, and I just feel like it's too late for me. And I'm laughing because I'm 57, and I understand what it feels like to be 28 and feel behind. And comparing yourself to other people is always a losing game. But so it could, I think it's for anyone. It feels like it's too late, or it might be too late. Because I think I've already blown my wad. I think I've already gone in the direction that I'm going to go, and I don't think I have time or the skill or anything else. And if I want to fight anything, one of the biggest things that gets in our ways is like these self-limiting beliefs. And yes, some of them are just trauma-based and all that kind of stuff, but some of them are just because that's what we've heard over and over and over again, is that this is what you're supposed to do. This is your role in society. It's funny because it's insidious. It's what gets into our belief system, but it's not as obvious as some cultures where you're born there and you're given a caste, and before you're even 3 years old, they've already identified, well, you're going to work in a factory and you're going to do this. It's not quite like that. So it's not as obvious, but it still exists. And we have that self-limiting behavior. So it's for people that are thinking that way, because defeating that mindset, that self-limiting behavior, that's that negative self-talk, that inability to see what else could I do is it's tough. It's tough, and it requires a lot of support, and requires other people, I think, to call you out very often. Susan does a great job of calling me out when I'm stuck in self-limiting behavior. And if you don't have a partner that is wicked supportive and you're not in a really good relationship, go find one. Go get one, because there are good relationships out there. Susan and I, we've had disagreements. We've had things that we need to smooth over and stuff, and we hit some rough edges. But it's the easiest relationship I've ever been in, because we're wicked honest with each other, and both compassionate and really care about each other and all that kind of stuff. And I don't want to make you sick or vomit, but it's a great relationship. But you need people, not just your partner, but other people that are going to not only be your cheerleaders, but are just going to call you out sometimes, and sometimes give you a kick in the ass and say, hey, you need to get off your ass and do something. And other times, they're going to say, you know what? Your view of yourself is completely ass backwards. Because very often we're much harder on ourselves than anybody else. If you said to me what I say to me, I'd have to kill you. And I believe that's true for a lot of people. But so it's for people that are kind of stuck. Those are the people I'm sort of talking to. And then it's the funny thing. It's like once you get to that point and you wake up and say, this is not cool. This is not right. I need to do something else. It's being able to come up with, what exactly do I do? And one of the other traps that we fall into is thinking that you've got to have this all laid out. Like I need this master plan, and I struggle with that a lot. Thinking, well, what is it? Unless I write it all out, if I know what the hell I'm going to do, I can't do this, which is bullshit. Once again, because all you need to do is start doing something. Start walking in a direction. I'm doing this channel like this right now. I'm just walking in a direction. If this tanks and doesn't go anywhere, well, I'll do something else, or I'll pivot the direction I do it. I just happen to like doing YouTube, so I hope that whatever I do involves that to a certain extent, which I'm sure it will, just because, if nothing else, this platform is, and I don't mean to be gush about it, because that kind of drives me crazy too, but this platform is actually really cool in terms of being able to advertise or direct people to anything else that you're doing. Susan has this business with music and children. She could do that. If you're an artist, you can direct people to your art that way. Whatever it is that you offer people, if nothing else, if it's not something that you can do via YouTube as such, you can at least talk about what you do and direct people there in a much more effective manner than I think you can do in a lot of other ways. And it's free, for God's sakes. And if enough people watch your videos, they actually pay you. But anyhow, when you get to this point, you need to figure out. You need to just start doing something. You need to figure it out. Just figure out kinda what you maybe want to do, because I don't believe you should be involved in I don't believe you should escape the 9-to-5 grind, or the wage slavery, as this guy Thomas Skrilas calls it, just to put yourself in another cage. You don't want to build something that you just absolutely effing hate. And that's one of the things I did not want to do. There were ways I could go about doing YouTube that would probably work really, really well. And there's various things, various formulas that you can use on YouTube that I probably would be seeing a lot more success right now. And it would suck. It would suck for me. And so I'm not going to do that. So whatever you do, it has to be something that aligns with you, and also something that you feel comfortable with, and you're good doing. And that doesn't mean you have to be good at it right now. It means you have to be able to at least develop a skill and then figure it out. But the thing is, well, it's going to take me a while to do that. Dude, it's going to, let's say it takes you 10 years to really figure out and hone something different. You're going to be 10 years older 10 years from now anyway. My sponsor told me that, I've been almost 13 years clean now. I'll be clean 13 years in July. And at some point I started talking to him about my job and what I want to do. This was years ago. And he said, well, you could do this or you could do that. He goes, but the thing is, in 10 years, you're going to be 57, Ivan. I think it's 47 by that time. And whether you do this or not, well, there was shit I didn't do. And guess what? I'm 57. So time now to start doing something. So I can tell you from experience that when you don't do things, you still get older, which is funny. But yeah, it's one of the weird things I think about any revelation that you start to have, because I started to have more and more revelations. I got past the being really pissed off about income disparity, and really pissed off about the way the system operates, and the idea that the ability that things were not a meritocracy. We've been told it's a meritocracy. The harder you work, if you just keep work harder and harder, you'll be rewarded based on that, and that's BS. And it's not. It doesn't mean it can't happen, but it means like the drift, or is that the word? There's a word for mobility that they actually measure in different countries, and that's taken a sharp decline, and it's really, really low in the United States. And that people tend to stay clustered around where their parents and their grandparents, everybody else was economically and all that kind of stuff. And it takes an awful lot. The outliers are able to do that, but we're told that anybody. So anyhow, once I got over that and started to look deeper, and started to see just how much programming there is, in our own heads and the people around us, it was really weird. It was like realizing all of a sudden, it was like almost like being in the Matrix, and all of a sudden you see the Matrix for what it is, and see these chains or boxes that are on us and put around us by ourselves in most cases. Some of it's from, some bad players, and some of it's just from the society we've inherited and the laws that we have. But a lot of it is just, this repeated mimetic belief system. And we're walking around in these chains and boxes that we mostly fabricated by ourselves, or had help fabricating. And so all these people, I started to see all these people sleepwalking through life, and people that are born and are going to live a certain amount of time and die and never really be alive. And it was really kind of uncanny to start to see people that way. And no, I'm not going crazy. But it was these moments where it seemed sort of surreal. So I'm walking in the grocery store and driving to work and going into like a workplace and just seeing all these people around, sitting in a meeting. And man, they're all dead and they don't know it. It sounds morbid, doesn't it? But you start to see just how trapped everybody is. And when you start to talk about that, most people are going to think you're crazy. And once again, it's not a conspiracy theory. And there's very few people that are going to say, yeah, I think you should do something about this, or I should do something about it. And there's people I run into at work now, and I'll ask them some probing questions every once in a while, just as an experiment. And there's so many people who are like, yeah, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of this job. I got to figure out something else to do where I don't have to do this. And it never gets beyond that. But some of them are more awake than others. Some people are just, completely, living for the weekend. Yeah, I'm going to get drunk this weekend. Okay, that's great, buddy. Have a good time. Or just figure they're never going to get out of where they are. Some of them don't even see how trapped they are. That's the thing. So you see people in various stages of being awake for a moment. And only a few of them actually get up and do something about it. And I don't mean you have to do something radical. Just freaking do something. Even if it is just getting a job that you really freaking like. Even if you're not escaping that way, we're just like, I don't have to work in this freaking job for the rest of my life. Because so much of my life, I just stayed. I took the path of least resistance because I was scared to do anything else. I had so much self-limiting beliefs that I said, well, I'll just stay here. And sometimes I literally had to get let go or laid off from a job before I did something else, which is insane. That's no way to live life. And so at some point I decided, screw this. I'm going to be more proactive because, Christ, I'm 57. I'm going to die soon. I don't have much time left. I'm not going to die that soon. But you get the idea. Although, who knows? You get the idea. But I'm walking around seeing all these people that just seem dead or trapped and they don't know it. And every once in a while, you see someone that seems to be awake too, but they don't know what to do. What do I do now? And there's tons and tons of videos you can watch all day long on YouTube, and I can take something from any of them. A lot of the people really sort of turn me off. And the last thing I ever want to be involved in is there's a culture now. YouTube has it as well, where it's a culture of teaching you how to be successful by teaching you how to teach others to be successful. And it's not exactly a pyramid, but there's like no end to that. I'm like, no, that's not where I want to go, because that's not me, and that would make me want to throw up in my mouth a little bit. But it's more of the idea is, okay, well, you want to do something. I could probably help you do that, or at least brainstorm or figure crap out, because I've done it with other people a lot in terms of other places where they're stuck. And I guess that's a talent of mine. And it's one of those things that's really, I'm not talking about being a therapist, because I'm not a therapist. I have a lot to do that. I have to tell you, I'm not a therapist, nor am I an addiction counselor or all these other things. I just happen to have recovered from addiction, and I happen to know a shit ton about making changes in your life. This is the video where Ivan swears a lot. But, that's the kind of thing I felt. It was just sort of accidental. I felt more and more drawn to talk about as I saw more and more about it. Where does that mean the channel ends up landing? Who the hell knows? It may center around that. I don't know. Right now, there's not much traction for it. I can tell you that. It's funny. I have the 2,400 some odd subscribers. A lot of those I know are legacy. A lot of those I know are legacy from 14 years ago. And from when I started making a lot of RPG videos again, in 2015. So my God, 10 years ago now, I started really doing the channel again in earnest, off and on. And there's some subscribers I have for making bass guitar videos. There's like, every once I do that, but like, I'm not going to do that all the time, because I'll tell you why. There's things that I care about. But there's other people that have these music channels, and they talk about stuff all the time, in case you're thinking about what can I do. And it depends on what you can make a channel or do, if YouTube ends up being something that appeals to you. And I think everybody ought to have one, just to try it once, for a variety of reasons, including it's just good for you psychologically. It's a very interesting psychological experiment. And so many people have so much stuff they can offer that they just don't realize what they can offer. Once again, you don't have to figure out what the hell your YouTube channel is about. You just start talking and you'll figure it out. But I made some videos which I think are the most helpful about like live band stuff. And it's kind of boring stuff. It's more practical. Maybe I'll write a book about, like a little ebook or something like that, and sell it. And it probably won't be very popular. Maybe. But there were some videos I did on bass guitar and bass guitar gear, which are my evergreen videos. People watch them consistently, like some of the amps I have. And I talked about the ones I actually like. But there are people that have channels, and once again, this is not something I want to get caught in, and it's something to consider if you start making a channel about a particular subject, is if it becomes your job, then you have to talk about the stuff all the time. And you have to talk about different pieces of gear all the time, or whatever. Or let's see if we can play bass guitar with, rubber bands on it, or let's look at this bass. And I don't want to do that. They're interesting channels to watch, but you can tell it's their job to talk about that now. And I was like, not so much. Which is one of the reasons that, I could have gone balls to the wall with role-playing games in the channel and competed with Professor Dungeon Master and all that kind of stuff. But once again, there are things I'm interested about in that, clearly, because I've made about 1 million videos, which you can find on this channel, about that. Hey, what's going on, Bastille? But you can find 1 million videos on those about that stuff. But I don't want to be Professor Dungeon Master and talk about things that I don't care about. I'd rather talk about things that I do care about. And it's become more and more evident to me, having been involved in the recovery community and, sitting around thinking about waking up more myself and saying, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have a more positive impact on my life in this area because, I got to lose weight again too. So I try to get my ass to the gym so I can make you people keep me accountable. Instead of physical, I'm doing okay, but need to get rid of the gut. So yeah, maybe I should make a series about that. So people would just say, hey, Ivan, have you lost weight? Put your money where your mouth is, fat boy. But doing stuff to improve my life in this regard, it's one of those things where I don't want to say I want to be evangelical, because that's not it. But one of the things I realized is talking to people, just asking some probing questions, seeing what they say, or just listening to people in general. So many people are screaming like, I hate what I'm doing. I don't like this job. Financially, things are tough. And, this guy said to me just the other day, I'm going to work till I die. And my ex-wife made sure I'm going to work till I die. That's really depressing. But the reality is, unless I do something different, that's what I'm going to have to do. So I don't want to do that either, especially not the job that I'm doing. If it was something I really enjoyed, where I called the shots, yeah, maybe not. Oh, thanks, Smashing. Yeah, I try to make videos about things I like. Have I made videos about things I don't like? Not really. Oh, right on, Bastille. That's awesome. You should tell me about that more in the comments or something. Or email me, because my email is ivanmike1968@gmail.com. Tell me more about that, because I'm jealous. I think that's awesome. And yeah, that's the thing. There is so much right now that he's got me, Bastille's got me off the track, which there was no track. That's one of those things when people do stuff that they like, they are freaking happy. When I do music, even on a bad day, even when I don't want to go there, I've got 2 gigs tomorrow. I've got one in the casino, and I've got one. Yeah, awesome. That'd be great, Bastille. One earlier in the day. And there's part of me that's like, man, I want to drive to the casino and do all this stuff. I've never played at the casino before, but I hear it's kind of a hassle. But when I'm doing all that, despite anything that could go wrong and the times where I have to lift a lot of heavy gear, I still enjoy it. It's still fun. I go home tired, but I go home happy and not irritated, by what I do now. And there's a lot of times, I don't know if anybody saw the video, but I made a video really recently where I'm at work, I'm ready to walk out, and nothing bad had happened. I'm just like, you know what? I effing hate this job. I hate this stupid crap. And picking up something and my chest hurts and it's muscular. And I'm like, but that thought comes to my head, man, if I could just have like a really mild heart attack, then maybe I don't want to have to work for a little while. That's nuts. You're not happy when thoughts like that come to your mind. So you ought to do something that makes you happy, you know. And in general, in life, there's no reason to walk around life miserable. And so many people walk around life miserable. And damn it, in a lot of ways, I was one of them. I made lots of positive changes in my life. Quitting using and quitting smoking cigarettes after that, and getting to myself to the point where I have a really great relationship, and go out playing music more again, and getting back into the role playing game hobby. All these things I've done, which have made my life better and richer in so many different ways, and not just stopping using, but like getting my mind a little reset in a lot of areas. But realizing there's this other area in my life which is causing me to be miserable. And I think that's part of what happens as we go through life, is we start to find out what are the areas in my life which suck, and what can I do to change them. And even if it's like this just conscious decision to do something every day, and if it doesn't work out, we pivot and you start doing something else, and you adjust what you're doing, but not getting into that trap of being like, well, I guess this is the way it is. I'm going to call bullshit on that. There are things that we cannot control, cannot change, but there are a lot of things that we sign up for that we don't have to sign up for. And some of them are things where we just become complacent, like the bad relationship, let's say, or the, I'm trying to think of something else. You'll figure something out for me. But then there's other things where we don't think we can do anything else because, we've been so programmed to think that we can't, to think that, you have to have a regular job. You have to be, even the people, God bless them, and as an atheist, when I say that, I mean it, that decide, I'm going to be a minimalist. Like this guy, what the hell is his name now? He's an interesting guy, and I'm not going to go find his channel. He's on all the time. I think I've talked about him before, but he's a minimalist. And he talks to people on YouTube all the time about that, goes all over the place, works a bunch of odd jobs, says, screw this stuff. But he's doing what he loves. He's enjoying his freaking life. And it's not for me, but who am I to say that he's doing anything wrong? And we all get to be individuals and do whatever the hell we want. That's one of the things, it's one of these truisms you find out in recovery, if you're in recovery from addiction, is very often people that are there for a very long time, if they've done some work on themselves too, they become a little bit eccentric. They're not all like each other. There's not like this cookie cutter, recovering addict that's been there for 30 years. They start to get a little eccentric. It's because they really become themselves. They stop giving a rat's ass, and just they become the person they wanted to be instead of the person that they were told to be, by society and by parents and all the pressure they felt. And I'm not going to blame drug usage on that, but it's a factor. When you feel so trapped that it makes it one of those things that you just want to cure and numb, and you don't think you can do anything about it. So the next best idea is to just go numb yourself. And so, my peers and I did that pretty hardcore, but think of like all the other people, and maybe you're one of them, that just go home and have a couple of drinks just to numb out, or you just watch Netflix, or you do something else, and instead of changing where you're at and doing something to change where you're at, you decide to, maybe not consciously, but you do something else just to forget about it. And honestly, like most people do that. They can't wait for the freaking weekend just to do something else. And by Sunday afternoon, if you're like me, you're thinking, oh crap, I got to go to work Monday. Is there any way I can be sick? or something? Can I just get hurt? Or can we figure out some way where I don't have to go to work, today because I don't want to do that anymore? And yeah, so that's what a lot of us do. I just, my peers and I did that on steroids. But I realized that looking at, the what we had to do in recovery to stop doing that and make other positive, like actually address the real issues in our lives. I'm like, well, the rest of life doesn't, not all that different than that. If you got something, I made a couple of videos about that. There's one of the videos I made, and I forget what it's called. It's really talking about the 12 steps, but I never mentioned the 12 steps. I just mentioned the process of figuring out that where you are, it's not really manageable, and starting to believe that maybe I could do something else, and then the whole 9 yards. That's really what it is. We didn't exactly, people in recovery don't have a monopoly on that. We just numbered them. That's about it. We're actually in the remedial class. Most people figure this stuff out. But yeah, so that's where I'm kind of landing right now with the focus of the channel lately. And it's not because I decided to abandon the things that I'm really interested in talking about, but I had nothing to say at this point. And this, like I started talking about way in the beginning of the video, I like making YouTube videos. Yeah, you don't want to live in your you don't want to die in your mid-60s from stress. That's a good point, Bastille. It's a good point. I started to realize, and I really honestly, I don't want to be one of those people. Man, I'm going to be one of those people that tell people how to have YouTube channels. But I swear to God, as an atheist, it is it is a really to express yourself. And maybe you'll hate it, and then it's a failed experiment. Maybe you'll actually really like it, but there's something about thinking about things. And I've been doing this with ChatGPT an awful lot lately. Anti-AI or not, there's all kinds of problems with it. Yes, I know, but there are ways you can put in prompts. But I've gotten ChatGPT to the point where it knows me enough, and I've told it, don't hold back, don't be agreeable, argue with me if you need to, or point out flaws my logic. But there's something, so I'll monologue into that sometimes and see what it spits back at me. And sometimes I agree with it, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's surprisingly insightful. It's crap I knew, but I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. If you work with AI, if you use something like ChatGPT and you've used it a lot, you can ask it things like, based upon what you know about me, what do you think my blind spots are? Don't hold back. Don't be agreeable. I want you to give me a real critical assessment of my blind spots, where I need to make some improvements, where my thinking patterns are wrong, and that kind of, or need to be challenged. What my psychological, I don't want to say hang-ups. That makes me sound really old. What are your hang-ups? You can ask us stuff like that. It's really remarkable, some of the crap that comes out. So there's something about saying stuff out loud that you're thinking about, stuff that you've researched, stuff that you've synthesized and in your head. And sometimes, like, once you realize this is wrong, okay, I need to reformulate this a little bit differently. But there's something about that, just monologue into a camera, making a YouTube video, that crystallizes what you're thinking a little bit more. And sometimes you realize, I can't publish this because this isn't quite right. But a lot of times you realize that, wow, this is, it sharpens your focus on what you're thinking. It makes you think about it a little bit more, because I don't know about you, but when I have thoughts rattling around in my head, they can be kind of circular, and they don't necessarily put all the pieces together. I can come up with a lot of really brilliant crap in my head, but that's something about writing it down or saying it. And I think there is a certain, my penmanship is horrible, and I need to work on my typing skills again. But there's something about saying it, which is really fascinating, and really, it does something. There's no magic, but something happens. And I'm sure somebody here knows the right words for that. But making YouTube videos really helps with that. And it's what's really remarkable is the comments you'll start to get back. And some people are just really blown away by the channels they've made, which all of a sudden become popular. or the videos, they've made videos, a bunch of videos in the past, and they make one that goes, semi-viral or whatever it is, and then people start looking at their old catalog. It's interesting the stuff you'll get back from people. And yeah, you'll get all kinds of BS. I mean, I really need to collect all the comments about my head, because when I make shorts, and sometimes if I go do this, you can see my head's normal, but it's a little, I call it Gumby head because I think it's a little bit more, I think I slept on the side as a very young baby. But there's the skyscraper head, and there's the cone head, and there's the best ever was your head looked like a potato, which I think I have to make a video about that again, about negative comments on YouTube, because some of them are just trollish and ridiculous. There's some people you have to hide from the channel because and the only ones I've hidden from the channel really are people that are saying, you're really making a lot of videos, but I can help you with SEO optimization. And yeah, screw off, dude. If I want help, I'll ask for it. And there's much better people than I could ask. But then there are, the people that say ridiculous and rude crap. I just, forget it. That's fine. However, there are times when people say something that's critical. You can kind of look at and say, oh, do I need to challenge my thinking here? A lot of times the answer is no. But sometimes people bring up some pretty interesting things. During, when I made a gazillion role-playing game videos, people really challenged me on a bunch of stuff. And I'm really glad they did. Because I found a lot of, it led my thinking down a lot of roads. And so I'm hoping to get more comments on my other videos, not just because that helps with the algorithm and, all that kind of stuff. Because if you like and you subscribe and you comment on a video, that shows engagement. And the more you watch the video, the more engaged, YouTube says you are. And, if you do super chats or you do things, then I just get money. But the more people do that, that's great. But the bigger value is that very often people will say things, and it's like, I didn't consider that. That's really interesting. And so I really value those comments. And especially, here in this new direction I'm going in, not just in the YouTube channel, but like what am I thinking about during the day? The more feedback I get, the better. Because it's one of those things where at least you get, more, you get more focus on your direction when you've had people engaging with you. Not everybody, but whatever you do too. And I think I've said it. You need to have some people that are going in the same direction. They don't have to be doing exactly what you're doing, but you don't want to live in an echo chamber, because that's dangerous too. And you don't need to look very far to find some echo chambers, which are pretty freaking toxic. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Maybe one day I'll get political on my channel, but today is not going to be the day. But, you don't want to be in an echo chamber for yourself, because it's not healthy. Because if you all just sit around and say the same thing, that's not super helpful. You want to have some challenges to your thinking. Was that, because this is a channel for people that aren't afraid of that. You have to be able to look at the evidence and not be afraid to kill your darlings, if you know what I mean. But at the same time, you need people that are kind of going for the same thing that you are, because so many people, especially when you're trying to make a change in your life, whatever it is, are going to try to talk you out of it, and they can be very well-meaning. And certainly nobody was really trying to talk me out of getting clean when I got clean 13 years ago. It's funny. It's when the people that you hang out with and party with say, yeah, it's a good idea. And that they were all really great. The people I was hanging out with left me alone. And there's still some wonderful people that I cannot go to their parties, not because they're bad people, but that's what happens there. But, excuse me, still a Diet Coke addict. But there are, at the same time, it's important to surround yourself with people that are going to be supportive, because when you're making changes where we decide, like, I'm going to escape the system. I'm going to escape this 9-to-5 BS and do something else, or do something just out of the ordinary, or be a minimalist. I can't even say that. That's why I won't do it. Or whatever it is, there are people, it's going to make other people uncomfortable. And they're going to be well-meaning people. And I've been one of them. They just say, what are you doing? I think that's a bad idea, man. And there's going to be people that aren't so well-meaning. It just makes them uncomfortable because they don't have the balls to do it. and they wish they did. And there's going to be people that are going to talk negative about you, and I've been guilty of that as well, because I see there's still that pang of jealousy I get when somebody does a lot better than me, or has done what I want to do, and they did it earlier. And it's pretty easy to feel jealous about that, isn't it? And I heard somebody say today that that's not necessarily a bad thing, because at least that gives you the motivation. It's jealousy is showing you what you actually want. When you're jealous of somebody else's success. And I'm not sure if I buy into that yet, but that's one of those things. I'm willing to listen to anything and see, do I add this to my repertoire of things that I think or not think, or is this worthy of consideration? Because very often there's no real easy black and white answer to a lot of these things. There's a lot of nuance involved. That said, a lot of times it's not just the critical thinking you need, it's the evidence. And if you haven't read Freakonomics, I would go read Freakonomics. I think something I said about one of the guys, I don't know, but who knows? Cancel culture is the way it is. And I don't think he did anything like that. I think people just were questioning something he said about some statistic at one point. I love books like that because they look at the data. And a lot of times the data produce results that don't make sense based on there's things, yeah, if I could just talk. You believe that things have to be a certain way. It makes sense. It makes complete logical sense. And then the data totally F you. And you find out that, in fact, no, that's not really true. And that's why you have to be really careful. You have to look at the data. You have to, and yes, I know things can be manipulated. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about really robust, well looked at data. That's one of the things that changed my mind about what happened in the 80s. I was really convinced that at one point that the changes done in the 80s and reducing taxes on the rich and all this other kind of stuff and trickle down and rising tide raises all ships was absolutely true. And it was just looking at the long-term data and looking at I was watching a video today, but I've seen this over and over again, and I wish I could remember that one. But it's really looking at the bifurcation of the increase in income between the wealthy and the middle class and the poor, and how from like the 50s and maybe like the 40s, it was really neck and neck. I mean, there was clearly the rich made more than the poor did, but as the economy expanded, it kind of went up, and then all of a sudden in the early 80s, after the tax laws changed, everything, boom, huge bifurcation. And poverty increased, and the middle class and poor did not keep up with the wealthy. And I think it was like 1970, whatever it was, 76, 78, the average CEO was making something like 26 times more than the worker. And by 90 something, it was 400 and something times more than the average worker. These were things that, the data will screw you sometimes. And it's tough. It's tough to argue with a really robust data set. That's one of those things you need to look at in your life as well. It's like, what is, I know what I'm thinking I'm doing, or I know where I think I'm going in my life, and maybe I'm just not doing it. Let me back up again, because sometimes I'm thinking faster than I can talk. But that's the idea. You work at the job, the system. You bought into the system. You didn't even have to buy in. So you bought in. That everybody else is doing it. That just seems like the right thing to do. And then here you are, and you're 50 or whatever, and you've got this big mountain of data that says, you know what? That was all BS. This is not working. And you're like, what's wrong? It's got to be working. All kinds of areas in your life where there's mounds of data. There were mounds of data for me about addiction and why it was killing me, why I needed to stop. And, but that's, I don't want to go on too much longer, but that's one of those things, my girlfriend was saying, well, you got to start talking to people about like, well, how do you do something now that you realize that I need to make a change? How do you do something? And one of the hardest things in my experience is making that decision to do something and then doing it. Because when I struggled in active addiction for years, there was a long period of time where I knew that I was in big trouble. I knew I needed to do something about it. And I didn't do it because I was scared to. It involved things like not using anymore. It involved, being embarrassed. It involved doing things that were going to be uncomfortable. And it was funny because even my life was miserably uncomfortable. But this was different discomfort. And So finally, and I didn't know what was going to happen, and that fear of the unknown. Well, what is life going to be like now after this? That's one of the things I think keeps us so stuck. Is maybe we hate our job, maybe we hate whatever situation we're in, and but if we know it needs to change, we hate it, but we just don't know what it's going to be like if we do something else. You know, is the devil you know better than the devil you don't know? Is the other thing really the devil? And so we stay in these really shitty, terrible situations that are killing us, or at the very least are not allowing us to live like we should be living our life, because we're just so uncomfortable. Not we're so scared of the discomfort, but we're also not sure what is it going to be like. And I can tell you from experience that every time I've done something that I wasn't sure what it was going to be like, but I knew I had to do something, it's always worked out much better than what I was doing. My life now is remarkable. And for all the changes I made, so why wouldn't it be any different making a change now to do something different? I can't quit my job. You can't. I don't think you can quit your job tomorrow. But man, if there's something that you want to do differently, or even if it's just you want to do a new, even if you just want to learn how to play bass guitar, which I think is a great idea, or start a YouTube channel, or learn to skydive, or whatever you want to do. It's so much cooler when you actually get involved, and it takes time. I wish it didn't. I wish there was instant reward, but that's drugs. Drugs are instant reward. Going home and numbing yourself with Netflix, that's instant reward. Doing something that's going to produce a profound, long-lasting change in your life, not instant reward. When you start to do it, it's going to feel terrible, and you're going to hit the dip, as they talk about, and where things just seem to really suck. And I don't know if this is working. And you keep at it, and you may need to do some course correction, but you keep at it, and the evidence, all the evidence I've seen points to it being better. And if nothing else, you feel a lot better about yourself for having done something rather than just sitting, hiding. Because that's what I did for a long time in various areas of my life. When I finally got off my rear end, and I had to be compassionate with myself. I'm not saying don't be compassionate with yourself, because that's hustle culture, and beating yourself up is nonsense. Maybe it works for some people. It's not necessary. It's just not necessary. Are those fireworks, or are we being attacked? I think they're fireworks. It's not necessary to do that kind of stuff. That stuff makes me sick. And maybe it works for you, in which case, good on you. But give yourself a little kick in the pants is different. Get off your ass and do something. But my experience is, you do something, you feel a lot better about yourself, and you may notice all of a sudden, well, holy shit, I've accomplished all this stuff too. And for me, at the end of the day, I don't want anything really big. I want to be able to wake up, have coffee with Susan, hang out outside, look at the dogs, look at the cats, go visit my grandchildren, not worry about, can I pay my bills? Maybe give the people I love, get them a present. Maybe, go on vacation with Susan, because I haven't been able to do that yet because I don't have the money. And, play some music, play some role-playing games with my friends, talk to my friends, talk to people about things that really interest me, that I find engaging, not small talk BS, but important things. Things about life, things about being human. That, helping people actually wake up and live. Doing stuff like that's all I really want. The ability to do those kind of things, the things I really enjoy and love, and make a living with some of them, and not be just stuck dreading going into a crappy job I hate, and looking at my bank account thinking, oh my God, how am I going to pay the bills this month? Don't need to be a millionaire. Will I buy a lottery ticket? Sure. Will I get, other chances of me being eaten by a shark right here, right now, greater? Yes, I think they are. Really, really close. Maybe slightly less. All right, kids, have a good one. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll talk to you later. Yes, I want to stop streaming.